Smallholder farmers, the backbone of rural communities, are abandoning their fields. This decline in small-scale cultivation raises concerns about food security, particularly for those who rely on it for their daily sustenance. Although government programs have tried to reverse the trend, this has yielded little to no success so far. To explore the complexities of the situation and proffer a lasting solution, I'm joined by Professor Waldo Krugell, an economist from Northwest University, South Africa. Thank you for joining me today.
Good morning, and thanks for the opportunity.
All right, so why are smallholder farmers in South Africa abandoning farming? What's the problem?
It's a complex one, and I think it's important to just frame it from the start. This is a specific set of smallholders in the Eastern Cape province. So there's a lot of variability in both climate and geography. So it's a specific group, and they are abandoning maize farming specifically. The key reason is that it's difficult to farm maize there. The soil quality is relatively poor, and they don't receive a lot of support either in terms of inputs or advice. There's very little social capital for example, the community to help them mend fences, etc. So it's become very challenging, and many of them are just stopping with maize farming and switching to cattle.
Well, the report says that, if people were able to produce more of their food, their lives will be improved. And that brings me to the question, how significant is the contribution of the smallholder farmers to food production in South Africa before this decline?
In South Africa as a whole, it's very small. In the local communities, though, it is significant. So they will definitely feel that difference in terms of the availability of basic foodstuffs in years to come. Unfortunately, there's no updated specific number that I can give you to say whatever percentage of their food requirements were met by their own farming of maize specifically. So let me sort of just say, nationally, very little, but locally, quite important.
All right, well, another challenge I have sort of noticed is that most rural residents do not see farming as their future main occupation. They rather sort of value part-time farming as only important for food security. Do you think this needs to change, and how can that happen?
In South African politics, there is a discourse about wanting to create this smallholder farming class through land reforms, but economically that doesn't really make sense. To my mind, people who do choose to farm should really be supported. But those that do receive land through the land restitution process shouldn't be limited to subsistence farming and supplying only to local markets. I would rather see those true farmers getting good support and pursuing commercial farming opportunities and joining global value chains. So the fact that they're abandoning farming is in itself not that bad, but the ones that do want to farm, they really need support.
All right, you talked about another kind of farming. Talk to us about it. How well is that also faring in South Africa?
Commercial farming is doing relatively well. Like many other countries in Southern Africa, we've also experienced the El Nino-induced drought, which presented challenges specifically for field crops. But as a country as a whole, at the macro level, we don't experience any sort of food security issues, and we're still a net exporter of many agricultural products. The issue of really a dual system where you have large and successful commercial farmers and then all the other farmers, that's a very significant issue, but not really linked to the country's food security issues.
All right. Well, I'm still talking about smallholder farmers because I feel that we still need to talk about them. So how much of a challenge is their inability to plow and fence their lands? Because I saw a report that sort of itemized, some of these issues, talking about how this is an issue. How much of an issue really is it?
It's quite a big issue, and it's the main reason why they are abandoning maize in favor of cattle. The old fences from the 1970s and 80s are now in disrepair, and the resources to fix them on an individual basis are very limited. The research that we're referring to also finds that there's little social capital to do this. And the end result is that these maize farmers are suffering losses and damages to their crops to the extent that they are now rather giving it up.
All right, well, we've seen government-sponsored programs in the past 20 years sort of aiming to reverse the decline in agricultural engagement, mainly by subsidizing fertilizers and GMOs or even hybrid maize seeds, with the assumption that these inputs are sort of the key to increase agricultural production. But why hasn't this been successful?
It really is a story of two parts. I think one is that the resources that have been dedicated to this were still very limited compared to the size of the challenge that we're trying to address. And the other is that resources only matter that much if you still lack education. So supplying these modern inputs to people who lack really the knowledge about how to use them best is futile in many ways. And behind all this is, of course, the broader issue of the failure of the land reform process to give people ownership of the land that they are on. There are different aspects to this. Some of it's government land, some of it's communal land, tribal land, and across the board, it's difficult for a farmer to really invest in the quality of their soil or of their production process if you're not the owner. And if you're not the owner, you can't commercially access finance and resources to do that. It's multiple challenges.
Right, that's quite an interesting one, I dare say. But we can also sort of see a historical twist to this, because you talked about things that happened in the 70s and all of that. And then we also saw that by restricting access to land for the black majority population, the apartheid regime confined them to less productive areas. And this sort of ensured a readily available source of cheap labor for mines and white-owned farms or settler farms, while also contributing to overcrowding and land degradation in the designated homelands for black people. Do you think this still has any impact on what we see today?
Unfortunately, yes. It's the terrible legacy of apartheid, and it's going to be with us for many more years. It's not the sort of thing that's easy to solve, but I don't think the solution is more small-scale farming going forward. The solution really lies in mobility to the cities and joining the modern economy. But maybe that's a topic for another day.
For another day, let's talk about it. It's important, how technology can advance and change things in agriculture production. I mean, yeah, let's talk about it in less than 1 minute.
Absolutely. I think there's a lot to learn from commercial agriculture, and there are many initiatives from their side to reach out to emerging farmers and small-scale farmers, and that all that is ongoing with a number of success stories of really improving processes, improving market access, but the scale of this really needs to be much bigger if you do want to crowd in many of the people who are struggling on the periphery of the economy. Maybe not all of them should be crowded in, and they should rather get a bus ticket and look for opportunities in other sectors in our urban areas. South Africa is relatively urbanized, but we can do with even more urbanization. And even though that process is also ongoing, good city planning and providing services around our towns and cities, I think, is the key for really future faster growth of the economy as a whole.
Closing on this, I'd like you to spare a thought for proponents of, empowering smallholder farmers. What's your thoughts to them, really, or for them?
I think the key lies in education. We've really, our agricultural schools, our agricultural colleges are by and large in disrepair and struggling. And if we can provide education to these farmers who are keen to join the sector, who want to be part of broader, bigger initiatives, that is the best way to do it. Then you can add on top of that the other resources, the finance, the fertilizer, etc. But education is the key, because agriculture is really, it's a modern and high-tech industry, and they want to join that part of it.
All right, Professor Waldo Krugell, economist, Northwest University. Thank you for your time and your thoughts.